All right, Brandon Joe Williams. This has been a long time coming, man. I'm so stoked to chat with you today.
Yeah.
So for those listening, we'll have an in-person, in-studio chat booked here in a few weeks. And I just got so excited about the stuff you're doing. I literally couldn't wait. I'm just like, all right, we're gonna do one online. For that reason, and because this information is going to be so new and mind-blowing to many people that I think it's going to require a couple of episodes for people just to get their head around it anyway. So as we jump into this, I want to give a shout out to my friend Alex Zek, who texted me one of your podcasts a couple months ago. I was like, oh, you got to check this guy out. He's going to come on my show. And so here we are. Let me see where I am. I'm on lesson 17 of 39 of your course.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just having my mind blown. So I think what we'll do, it's just, I'm obsessed. Anyone that knows me is like, really? Is that all you do now? Yeah, pretty much. So in this one, we'll do kind of a nice overview for people. And then when you get out here to Texas, we'll dive into more of some of the higher level complexities around infinite money and discharging debt and all of the fun stuff that happens kind of once you get into this. For those listening, you will have already seen the show notes and the title to the show. For you, Brandon, just to kind of set this up, it was probably 20 years ago, I think, when I heard this guy, Jordan Maxwell, talking about common law terminology and the birth certificate and why there's a bar and why the judge is sitting up on the thing with the black robe. And there's all this sort of legalese double speak that really makes the world turn in the world of law. And so I've always found that very intriguing. But when I started to try and actually learn it in a way that I might be able to apply it in my life someday, I found there was a huge roadblock because God bless them, all of these kind of boomer, patriot types that are teaching some of this law information had, illegible 1997 websites. And there was no podcast featuring any of these people. Everything is kind of not written that well. And so I'd start to study some of this and just basically get stuck and just give up because it wasn't applicable and it wasn't presented in here's how you do it kind of way. It was like, well, there's this thing out there, but good luck figuring it out.
Yeah.
And you're the first guy I've found that's actually like, cool, I've dug in and studied all of this stuff and, created your course and other things that you're doing that actually show people how to do it. So I think that's why I've been so fired up because it's a younger guy who speaks my language and seems to get this and is able to convey it in a way that is relatable. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I say thank you to those people that you could barely understand because the thing is that without them, I wouldn't have had anything to work with to try to. I wanted to take the information that they were trying so hard because they care, because they're great people. I tried to take a lot of their information, simplify it, add a lot of humor and entertainment value to it, and bring the average demographic age range of somebody who may be interested in it way, way down from that particular demographic. So while that is true, and I agree, and I say that a lot myself, I also at the same time try to appreciate a lot of what they did because if it wasn't for what they did, such as even like Copper Moonshine Stills and James C. Lovett and all these guys, I probably wouldn't have never done any of this.
Yeah, me too. And I didn't mean to be disparaging against them. I think it's just, it's me expressing my frustration of going, I think there's something really interesting and potentially life-changing and transformative here to get an understanding of what really makes the world tick. And then kind of digging into it and being like, okay, well, what do I do with this? It's frustrating when you can only kind of be taken to a certain point. Yeah. So maybe a good place to start would be, it's funny, we're in a selection year now. And, I look on social media and I see all these people fighting over the politician they want or don't want. And as I learn more about this common law world, I'm really seeing the futility in arguing about politics because if someone has really taken their life into their own hands in a lawful way, it almost seems like it doesn't matter who the politicians are because they're essentially just C-level executives of various corporations that are really running things. So I think that's kind of something that's very freeing about this as well. Maybe let's start out in breaking down the three general types of law: land, air, and sea.
Yeah. Well, could we actually start with status correction? Would you mind? I think that would be more.
Okay.
We can kind of swing over to that a little bit later.
Okay.
So, status correction. I was actually talking with someone the other day about this, and it's a term that you're starting to see more and more and more with all of this stuff, right? It's not really well defined, even within our own community. If you've noticed that, I mean, no one's ever really stopped and said, what does that even mean? And I was thinking about it yesterday. I was on this. I was doing a pre-call with a very big show that will go unnamed for now, and he's asking me about status correction, and I've been dealing with status correction for 20 years. And status correction, and I go, well, what is status correction? And he goes, and I kind of realized I was like, we talk about this all the time, and even within our own group, we don't really totally know what that even means. If we were to define it, let's say in a courtroom, because everything's in my life is going into courtrooms and litigation now, so I'm starting to think like this all the time. Status correction. What is that? Explain that to the jury. So I was kind of thinking about that a lot over the past week. What is status correction? And I think I've developed what I would consider to be a good definition for it, which is two things. First and foremost, it's the definition of the word person and realizing that you're actually two different persons. So the definition of the term person means an individual or an organization. And if you look in the tax code, such as the Internal Revenue Code, Title 26, the definition of person is an individual, a trust, estate, partnership, association, corporation. Could be any of those things, right? So when you were born, there was a corporation that was made of your name in all capital letters, right? And that's what the Social Security account is, and that's what a lot of these different accounts are. That's what all your banking bills come in this particular name, right? And a lot of people use the term the straw man to use the term for describing that thing. So there's all this chaos and confusion, and people say straw man and all this stuff, blah, 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 and it goes on and on and on, but no one stops and says, what is straw man? So from the definition from Cornell Law School, which I'm reading here, I can do a screen share. We're gonna talk as though we're not screen sharing for the audio audience. But for the video audience, I try as hard as I can to show everything I talk about. That way I'm not just some whack job who's lost his mind on some show, right?
Love it.
So here we have Cornell Law School, straw man. Straw man is a third party that holds property in intermission for the sole purpose of transferring it to another. Now, this is very, very interesting because if you go to my website, I have an old definition of the term attorn, such as attorney. This definition comes from the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, 5th edition. Attorn has three definitions. Definition 1 is to recognize or bring about a transfer, especially of property. Number 2 is to transfer something to another. Number 3 is to turn or transfer homage and service from one lord to another. This is the act of feudatories, vassals, or tenants upon the alienation of the estate. Okay? So you have this definition of attorn, which is what attorney means, which means to transfer. I laugh because they say, there's a lot of guys like Dan S. Kennedy is one of my favorite marketing guys, and he says that attorney should never be broke because it's the only profession where you can legally steal, right? And literally the word attorn means basically to steal. No joke, right? So it's kind of funny because it's people don't like attorneys. Well, that's because that's the name attorn. It means to turn away from God, to transfer ownership, to transfer property. And then you have the definition of the word straw man. It's a third party that holds property in intermission for the sole purpose of transferring it to another. So an escrow account could be a straw man, and then the attorney is the one getting the objects or things into the escrow, thus transferring its ownership through legalities and law, which is probably in some way illegal, even though it happens. So a turn and straw man actually go together pretty nicely. But the term that I use, the terms that I like, the terms that are actually more clear about what is the actual name of this particular thing that is created when you are born, is actually these two terms, which I'll say into the audio. So the first term that I really like comes from the Black's Law Dictionary. It's called public corporation. Very, very clear definition. We don't need to go off onto some conspiracy theory about this. We just need to read the definition verbatim, and it's very, very open, very clear, and very upfront as to what it is and how it works. A public corporation is one created by the state for political purposes and to act as an agency in the administration of civil government. I'm going to read that one again. It's very important because it has everything to do with this whole status change and taxation and naturalization and nationality. And this is an important part of all of this information. Public corporation. A public corporation is one created by the state for political purposes and to act as an agency in the administration of civil government. So it's basically like a middleman, or you could almost go so far as to say, could it be used as a straw man? Could it be a third party that holds property in intermission for the sole purpose of transferring it to another via a attorney? Sure, it could. That's not what it is. That's not what it is in its most basic form. In its most basic form, it's just a corporation that's used as some sort of intermediary or relay station between the government and an individual. Whether it's good or bad or evil or horrible or wonderful, that's not really established in this definition, okay? And that's what I like, because it's not really intrinsically evil. That's the other problem, right? It depends on what you know and how it's used, okay? Another definition that's very important that people should know, another way to describe this particular organization or corporation that's born out of your birth certificate when it's processed at the Department of Health and Human Services is ens legis, which is spelled ENS space LEGIS. The definition of ens legis from the Black's Law Dictionary is a creature of the law, an artificial being as contrasted with a natural person, applied to corporations considered as deriving their existence entirely from the law. And then here I have the Title 26, the Internal Revenue Code definition of the word person, which is probably one of the most important things to ever know in all of law and all of status correction. The term person shall be construed to mean and include an individual, a trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation. So when it comes to status correction, you realize that you're actually two different persons. You are a corporate body and you are a legal body. Or I'm sorry, you are a corporate body and you are a living body or human body or man, whatever, flesh and blood, however you want to say it, right? So in law, they call a human body or flesh and blood natural person. Now, if you dig down that definition far enough, you'll find that they could possibly also be talking about artificial people within the definition of natural persons. So there is a bit of a nefariousness and unclarity to the word natural person, but in general, especially if you want to operate in the courts like I do, where you're actually in court a lot and dealing with court cases and litigating to get things done, you will need to operate as though you as the living being is a natural person in the law, even though that may not be entirely true. But if you don't take that as truth to some degree or another, then you really just can't even operate in the courts at all. It's just not possible. Their terminology ends at that point in terms of what is a person. Okay.
Another term that you hear people use in terms of status correction, and we will be defining more of this for those listening that are like, what are you even talking about? Is they'll use the legal fiction, right? So you're born as a human being, and then you're issued this birth certificate that gets recorded and creates this ens legis or fiction, person, etc. And so we're walking around in a duality, essentially, is the way I look at it, right? It's like you, the living flesh person, and then there's this micro corporation that's been created, and that's what's interfacing with the government and required to pay taxes and all these things that we don't want to do. But would you say a legal fiction is a viable way to frame that as well?
Well, yeah, even in the definition of the term ens legis, a creature of the law, an artificial being as
Oh, there we go.
contrasted with a natural person. That's an unaltered definition straight out of the dictionary, literally. So the first part of status correction, which I believe is more of a liquid understanding, it's a lifestyle and not a piece of paper like what you see a lot of people talking about. It's just a bunch of paper that you sent off once and now all of a sudden you're in a status correction. I don't believe that at all. I used to believe that until I started to understand it more, and now I think it's more of a martial art and a lifestyle, and it's a lot more simple as well. So there's two parts to, quote, status correction, end quote. Okay, the first one is persons. What persons are here? What persons are at play? And then what are the various persons? So the all caps name, when you put a credit card into a credit card machine, you're actually producing currency or funds out of thin air. What is the only institution in this world that is allowed in the law to produce brand new currency out of thin air? The answer to that question is the word bank. So the all caps name is a public corporation. The all caps name is a bank. The all caps name is a lot of things. It's anything that allows the government to interface between a human being and the government is basically operated through the confines of that public corporation. So the public corporation has many functions. Okay. It has banking functions. It has, it's a known fact in the corporate world that corporations give you limited liability and commercial activity. So the beautiful thing is that you can operate into the government with complete immunity as long as you operate into the government using your agency that was developed for the purpose of, let me reread it because I don't like to just paraphrase. A public corporation is one created by the state for political purposes and to act as an agency in the administration of civil government. When you use that person as an agency in the administration of civil government, you also get limited liability in everything that occurs in those transactions because the person that you are using, the public corporation, is the one with financial and legal responsibility, which I know is insane for most people hearing this for the first time, probably kind of breaking your skull, maybe feeling like glass. That's normal. That's what this is. And there's really no way to really get around some of those feelings and how people may feel about that. That's how this works. And that's what this is. And some of it is kind of hidden. A lot of it is not. When you get into the actual court and you start operating in the court, you can have full-blown conversations with judges about this, and they know exactly what you're talking about. And they will assist you to help you figure out which persons are in play, what are they, what are their responsibilities, and how does this all work. This is real. This is how it really works. Okay. Most people that are not involved in the court systems do not know any of this information. And the problem in status correction is that you are identifying with this particular corporation, saying that you are this corporation, thus creating one person out of two different persons. That is a big, big issue. So you say the word status correction. If you, for example, let's say in a religious atmosphere, right? Some people believe, such as myself, that I am a spiritual being that inhabits a body. There are two different bodies, or two different characteristics, or two different persons, or two different entities, or two different awarenesses at play. You have the non-physical spiritual awareness, which is myself, the seat of creativity. And then you have the physical body, which is an awareness, right? The way that law operates, it's exactly the same thing. If someone believes as though they are their physical body, they are two different awarenesses operating as a single unit. When it comes to status correction, you need to realize that you are not this public corporation ens legis. You are in the confines of the law, you are a natural person that operates the public corporation or ens legis as an agency in the administration of civil government.
From one respect, then you're acting as essentially an attorney on behalf
Precisely.
of your corporate identity, the ens legis.
Precisely. To operate in America, to operate in law, to operate in banking, you are an attorney on behalf of the ens legis public corporation. So you can use terms like, I am the agent on behalf of the ens legis. I am the attorney in fact in regards to the ens legis. I am the representative of the ens legis. These are all valid terms, and people may try to tell you that they're not, but they very, very much are. And when you get into actual litigation and you get in front of an actual judge, especially a federal judge, they respect the fact that you actually know what's going on and you aren't a many, many terms that they use for people who are, I mean, even the word dolt, which is funny, DOLT, it's the definition is a stupid person. What term uses the word dolt in it?
Adult.
Adult. Literally, you are adult, right?
That's great.
So, but the thing is that at the same time, you also have the term idiot. Legal definition of idiot. One of the legal definitions of the word idiot is a private person, meaning somebody who's not involved in any sort of legal capacity. So if they have you in a courtroom and they say, you're an idiot, then you could actually say, well, yeah, I don't really know a lot about all your legalese and all your goofiness. And that's actually one of the terms of idiot. I want to find it. Maybe it's idiota is actually the actual idiota legal definition without digging through all sorts of things. And let me see if I can find it. A private man, one not in office, in common law. An idiot or fool. So you see here, these terms are really interesting because you can actually go and say, I'm an idiot. I'm a private man. I'm not involved in all of this goofiness. And that's actually, one of the definitions. And you say the word adult. Well, what is that? It's a stupid person, right? So my whole platform, and Luke's aware of this, is all about the definitions of words and terms, and not just using words and terms loosely, like the word straw man is used very loosely. And you can go online and you can find 580,000 people talking about that term, but not one of them will tell you it's a third party that holds property in intermission for the purpose of transferring it to another. And that's what it actually is. It's not this nefarious, vague, God knows what. It's almost like an escrow account, essentially. Or I've heard this term transferring utility. That might be another term that could be used for straw man, but straw man is something very specific. Okay. Now, that's the first part of this status correction. How many persons are there? What is a person? Who are you as a person as a relation to the other persons in your life? If you have 4 corporations, 4 businesses, you actually are the agent on behalf of 4 corporations, 4 persons, and then your ens legis is also a person. And then within the confines of a legal action, you are a natural person. So if you have a social security number and you have a birth certificate, and you have a business owner and you own 2 businesses or 4 businesses, you have however many businesses you have plus 2 additional persons in your life that you are operating. So you would have, in that case, 6 persons that you are operating. And you can think of these persons almost as game pieces, like Monopoly pieces, the car and the hat and the little scruffy dog and the iron, right? So you have 6 of these pieces in this game, and all of those pieces are considered persons in the law. So if you aren't aware of that and you're operating as though you are just one person, you are in an incorrect status. And that's why the term status correction is correcting an incorrect status. That's number 1. Now, the second part of status correction is location. Where are all of these pieces located? how do you move these various playing pieces around, and what are the benefits and pitfalls of these various locations these pieces could be in? So that's the second part. So we're
Because
going to go through
the location determines jurisdiction, and jurisdiction is the whole game, right? I mean, that's what
location determines jurisdiction. It also determines taxation. It determines a lot of things. Location is very important. I would say knowing which person's which and having the identities worked out is probably a little bit more important than location, but location is very, very important. It's number 2 in line. There's nothing else at all, in my opinion, in terms of what status correction really is. There's just identity and location. That's it. So when it comes to location, we're going to start with 28 USC 3002. The 28 signifies the title, which is just the section of the United States Code. And then the second number, the 3002, represents the subsection inside of that title. So 28 space USC space 3002 can be typed into Google just like that, and it'll pop right up. I like Cornell Law School because Cornell Law, it takes all of the special definitions that are involved in these particular things, which some of them are really crazy and kind of enraging. It'll make those particular words clickable so you can go right to the special definitions and never miss one that could really, really be a big pitfall for you. Okay. Other websites, a lot of the other ones don't do that for you. Cornell is very nice. So we're going to go into subsection 15. It says here, United States means, subsection A of that 15 is a federal corporation. Okay.
boom, there it is.
So United States is a
insane.
federal corporation. Now we already know. Okay, so is a corporation a person? Yes, it is. Okay, so we've got a person now. Now, where is that person located? We're going to go to a different body of law called the Uniform Commercial Code. Now, in the United States Code, the different sections go by titles. In the Uniform Commercial Code, the different sections go by what's called articles. So in the Uniform Commercial Code, we're going to go to Article 9, Section 307. And the way that you write that is UCC space 9-307. We're going to go down to subsection H. It says here, location of United States. Below that, it says the United States is located in the District of Columbia. So we have a person, and that person is located inside the 10-mile square radius called Washington, D.C. That's probably pretty shocking for most people. Okay, so we have this location. So everyone thinks that United States is this gigantic sector which includes all of North America. That is entirely and completely false. United States is we actually don't know exactly where it's located, because you could say it's located on the southwest corner of District of Columbia. It could be located on the northeast corner of District of Columbia. It could be in the center. We also have the fact that District of Columbia is 10 square miles. How many square miles and what shape is that zone called United States within the District of Columbia? We don't know. I've never seen it anywhere. All we know is that the United States is located in the District of Columbia. We don't know where, we don't know how big, but we do know that's where it's located. Okay? So I usually just say it's just all of DC, because we don't know where in DC it's actually located.
Let me pause you for 1 second there, just to try to give a bit of a 30,000 foot view. We think that we live in a country called the United States, when in fact we live in a country called the United States of America. So there's again this duality. There's this corporate infrastructure that's been superimposed upon the original country. And then as an individual living person, we have another duality, because there's the person on paper, the ens legis, and then there's the actual living, breathing human being. So we're kind of in this world where I would say 99.999% of the people living in this country, and we can talk about other countries a bit later, but just focusing on the US right now, is that there's kind of the real world, and then there's this legalese superficial world that's been superimposed upon it, yet most of us don't even know that the secondary world exist because that's the only world we think is real. And underneath that is this foundational world where you're a living person on a territory of 50 states, right? Can you take us back to the ratification of the 14th Amendment in 1871 when this trickery kind of began to, uh, help us kind of get amnesia as to the reality of that we're living in?
Well, let me. Would you mind if I just completed the location part and then we can jump
Okay,
straight
sure,
into
sure,
that? We'll
sure.
jump straight into
Yeah.
that right afterward because I just want to
Okay,
make
cool.
sure that we clean up because there's only two parts to this thing called status correction, and location is an important aspect of it.
Okay.
But once we do that, I'd love to because it is important. How did all this start and what happened and how did it? It's a very once we finish this conversation, that conversation will be very very easy to go over, right? So.
Perfect.
The next one we're going to go to is 42 USC section 9102. We're going to scroll down to subsection 18. And we're going to see here, it says here, United States citizen means A, any individual who is a citizen of the United States by law, birth, or naturalization. Law means that it was created under the laws of or is contracted into the laws of the United States. Birth means born in the United States, which is difficult because we don't actually know exactly where it's located in Washington, D.C. And then we have naturalization. Naturalization, in my opinion, is where all the fun begins and ends. Naturalization is where all the excitement is, and it's where status correction actually occurs. So naturalization, the definition comes from 8 USC 1101 subsection A23. And the definition is so simple and so powerful that it's extremely shocking. And it took me a long time to be able to swallow this definition because I'm always thinking there's got to be something nefarious here. There has to be some fine print. There has to be something more to this. And I was digging around and bashing around and hunting around, and I just couldn't have the fact that this could possibly be true. And after some time of not really able to find anything underneath this and realizing that this is actually pretty clear and it actually is this crazy and this simple and this powerful, it's mind-blowing, and it has become the centerpiece for all of what I would consider status correction. The term naturalization means the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person, remember, person, after birth by any means whatsoever. And you may feel like you're in a full-blown daze, like a boxer just hit you in the head, okay? And you might feel that way for a month about this definition. I assure you.
Dude, it's when I first heard you talk about that definition, I'm like, there's no way that it can be that way.
I know.
That can't be true.
I know.
Especially the by any means whatsoever, which is essentially you sending a few affidavits off going, I'm now naturalized here or there or wherever.
Correct.
And it must be followed. It's like some of this stuff is so
correct.
I mean, on one hand, it's kind of confusing, right? But on the other hand, some of it is so simple that one can't even believe that it could be that easy to get essentially leave the matrix lawfully. It's insane.
It's literally open sesame. No joke. No joke. Open sesame. So what this means is we've already covered that you have this Monopoly board, you have your car, you have your top hat, you have your iron, you have your scruffy dog, okay? Now, each of those things in your ens legis would be in there. That would be the whatever, other one. And then you have the natural person, which again, that's a little bit tricky, but some people are going to freak out. People who are on my side of the equation on all this, they hear the word natural person. They're like, no, it's not because of all this stuff. And there is some truth to that. But again, to operate at all within the confines of the courts, you are a natural person, okay? Which can definitely be rebutted as an assumption. But I use it. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. When you understand how all this works, the dangerousness of being considered a natural person goes down by like 99%, 99.9% anyway. So the danger is being identified as a ens legis. That's where all the danger is. Okay. So let's cover this. So how does the Monopoly game work when it comes to what's called status correction? Okay. So first and foremost, you thought you had one playing piece. Now you're learning you have a whole bunch of playing pieces. Some people listening to this, people who have all sorts of estates and trusts and corporations, you've got all sorts of playing pieces. You might have 35 or 55 or 100 different playing pieces. If you're a real estate investor and you put all your real estate in trusts and estates, you have so many persons, it's unbelievable. You might have 35 or 45 persons, okay? So, and your children are also 2 persons each, by the way. So you have 2 persons for each child. So you don't actually have, in the legal world, 1 child. You have 2 persons for your children per child, okay? Now the second part, location, is how do you move all of these playing pieces around on the board? You don't roll a dice. You don't ask for permission. You literally just say, and I am not kidding, and most people listening to this will not believe me. It's okay, because I didn't believe it for a long time either. You grab your car or your little dog or your little iron and you pick it up and you say, I confer the nationality of the state of Boardwalk upon this car after birth by any means whatsoever. And you take the car and you place the car on Boardwalk and you are now at Boardwalk. I am not kidding when I say this. So status correction, most people will say that status correction is a one-time thing. You send in some papers and now you have corrected your status. You can change the location of all of your game pieces 1,000 times an hour if you wanted to. You could move the dog and the iron and the car onto every single spot on the entire Monopoly board thousands of times per hour. So let's say, for example, you wanted to operate in all 50 states inside of the corporate states. Because if United States is located in the District of Columbia, where do you think State of California is located? It's also a corporation located in the District of Columbia. Okay. Now, let's say you wanted to operate commerce in all 50 states. It's very easy. You create 50 persons, 50 corporations, 50 trusts, 50 associations, 50 partnerships, and you naturalize each of the individual 50 persons into each of the 50 corporate states. For example, I can create 50 corporations called Brandon Joe Williams, California, Brandon Joe Williams, Utah, Brandon Joe Williams, New Mexico, Brandon Joe Williams, Texas. And I can confer the nationality of State of California upon Brandon Joe Williams, California, after birth by any means whatsoever. And Brandon Joe Williams, California, that playing piece is now located in State of California, which is located in Washington, D.C. Which I know, again, is completely batshit insane. Like on a scale from 1 to 10 billion, it's a 10 billion on the crazy scale. But I'm telling you, that's what this is. And that's how it works. And those two things, one being identity, 2 being location, is status correction. And it's not this like you send in some documents one time and it's all, I mean, yes, that's part of it. That is a correction of status. But getting up into martial arts level with this stuff is you can move and change and you can have more persons. Let's say you start losing the game. Put 100 more playing pieces on the board. Create 100 more persons. Nothing's stopping you. You can locate all those persons anywhere you want. There's no way you can lose. When you realize how this really works and you realize how identity and location really works, you can't lose. You can't lose ever, 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 ever. It is a physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, and legal impossibility that you could possibly lose. Now, when you say that you, which you're actually referring to the ens legis, is located as a U.S. citizen or is located in state of California, which we've already covered is this. It's a subcorporation of United States, which the proof on that is you can find state of California, state of Utah, state of Texas, all listed on Dun & Bradstreet as businesses, which I'm not going to get into all that because the Dun & Bradstreet website irritates me sometimes. I can't search very well in there. So when you go to voter registration and they have your name in all capital letters and they say, where is this person located? You'll never notice it until now. Now you'll start to notice this terminology. Like, for example, when you get your driver's license, write the name of the person who is applying for a driver's license, right? Very tricky, very, very tricky, right? Because now you got to think identity. Number one, which identity are they referring to and how and why, right? So when you do voter registration or when you fill out a W-9 tax form, the bottom of the W-9 tax form states in Section 2, which I will read it verbatim, I'm not going to paraphrase it. Section 2 under the certification section, under penalties of perjury, I certify that. Number 3 says, I am a U.S. citizen or other U.S. person. Where it says sign here, right next to where it has the little arrow for the signature, it says signature of U.S. person. You were not a U.S. person until you said you were a U.S. person.
You just naturalized yourself.
You just naturalized yourself.
Yeah.
You naturalized yourself with your driver's license. You naturalized yourself with voter registration. You naturalized yourself with your passport. You naturalized yourself all over the place.
Marriage license,
concealed carry permit, all the good stuff. Anytime that you sign under penalty of perjury that you are this all caps ens legis, and this ens legis is located in the District of Columbia or state of California or state of Utah or state of Texas, you are conferring the nat. Now, the thing is that on all these documentations, they are not referring to the natural person. They're actually referring to the ens legis. So you are not actually naturalizing yourself as a natural person into any of these things. You're actually unknowingly identifying yourself as the ens legis, and then you're naturalizing the ens legis into the state after birth by any means whatsoever. Now, traffic laws associated with state of California only apply to people who have contracted in and naturalized as residents of state of California. A ticket is a complaint. The word complaint is a lawsuit. All lawsuits, when they first start, the first document that's filed is called a complaint, unless it's a petition, which is a little different. But just to keep it really simple, it's almost always going to be what's called a complaint, okay? A complaint is a lawsuit. So what a ticket is it's a micro lawsuit for breach of contract. You have naturalized into state of California through voter registration, usually it's voter registration is one of the best ways that they can get you on the naturalization end, right? So just to keep it simple, U.S. citizen is somebody who lives in United States. United States is located in the District of Columbia. Very simple. Very, very simple, right? So now you got to ask yourself, before we get into voter registration, I'm going to show one other thing here. So if we go up from naturalization and we go up just a couple points to 8 U.S.C. 1101 subsection A21, we have another term here, another option. It says here the term national means a person owing permanent allegiance to a state. This is a complicated thing. Okay, so first off, we have the word person. Could be a corporation, an association, trust, partnership, whatever. Permanent. People get really tripped up over this word, which is great. Cornell's great. They make it clickable. Boom, we can go right to it. The term permanent means a relationship of continuing or lasting nature as distinguished from temporary, but a relationship may be permanent even though it is one that may be dissolved eventually at the instance either of the United States or of the individual in accordance with law. This is a trap word.
That's crazy, dude.
This word means absolutely nothing. They put it in here just to trip people up, I guess. I don't know why it's here. It means it's totally an oxymoron. It doesn't have any definition. It's circular, and it means absolutely nothing at all whatsoever. You can remove this word from this definition, and it'll make absolutely no difference legally as to what this definition means. And it actually clears up the term very well. So let's go ahead and just remove this and reread this word. The term national means a person owing allegiance to a state. Very simple. Very, very, very simple. Now it's starting to take shape. Okay, I can think with that, right? That's not too hard to think with. Now, what we're going to do is the term allegiance. I have a special document that I give away for free on my website for people to attach to their DS11 passport application form. I believe you use this one, right, Luke?
Indeed.
So we're going to look up the definition of allegiance here, and we're going to look up a few pieces of information in terms of how this works, okay? So the term allegiance is something that a lot of people who are into the freedom movement and that kind of thing have an issue with, right? Because they think to themselves, well, I don't want to pledge allegiance to the United States now that I know what it is, but here we go. Check this out. In Black's Law, second edition, allegiance is defined as the following. By allegiance is meant the obligation of fidelity and obedience which the individual owes to the government under which he lives or to his sovereign in return for the protection he receives. It may be an absolute and permanent obligation, or it may be qualified and temporary. So the thing is that they're not telling you have to do. They say permanent, but then they define it and it destroyed itself, right? So the thing is that it's not actually absolute and permanent unless you would like it to be. It's simply a statement of qualified and temporary allegiance. They will still issue you a passport in that way. And the way it works is as per 22 USC 212, it says here, no passport shall be granted or issued to or verified for any other persons than those owing allegiance, whether citizens or not, to the United States.
That's insane, dude.
And then we have another section here, 22 CFR 51.2. A passport may be issued only to a U.S. national. Okay, what's a U.S. national? U.S. national is defined in that same section, right by where we saw naturalization and national. The term national of the United States means A, a citizen of the United States, or B, a person who, though not a citizen of the United States, owes permanent allegiance to the United States. Now, think about this. Do you need to be located in the United States or even speak English to owe allegiance to the United States?
Nope.
No, you do not. A person who is not living in Washington, D.C., but pledges their allegiance with an unqualified or qualified statement would qualify as a person owing allegiance to a state. That state is called United States. So that person is now a national of the United States, or another way they put it on the I-9 employment eligibility verification form, a non-citizen national of the United States. Now, why is this important? You can see here on the I-9 for the video peeps. Section A citizen of the United States. Section B, a non-citizen national of the United States. If you scroll down, list of acceptable documents. It says here, employees may present one selection from List A or a combination of one selection from List B and one from List C. You need to, in order to work, you have to establish identity and you have to establish employment authorization. What does it say here on List A that proves both identity and employment authorization instantaneously? Subsection number 1. What does it say right here?
U.S. passport or U.S. passport card.
So if you pledge allegiance to the United States, you are issued a passport. All you need to open bank accounts, to get utilities hooked up to your house, to work in the United States, as a passport. You do not need anything else. You do not need a registration card, a school ID. You do not need a social security number. You do not need absolutely anything else at all whatsoever to operate entirely in America as an American, as if you were born and raised here. All you need is a passport. And all you need to be eligible to get a passport is to pledge allegiance to the United States.
It's just insane. You know what comes to mind when we're going over this stuff, and something I've pondered a lot as I've been studying, is I feel so bad for people that want to come here and are excited to become a US citizen. And it's such a kind of paradox that if you are officially a US citizen, you essentially have no rights. You've unknowingly volunteered, and this is for people that were born here and people that are coming here. The Bill of Rights, the Constitution, these things that we claim protect our rights actually don't apply to a US citizen. It's like being a US citizen is actually a lower grade of citizenship than not being one, than being a state national, or whatever you want to call it. There's many names for someone who has, as we're talking about, corrected their status.
Yep.
But I've always felt like, oh, thank God I'm a US citizen, man. Like I can hang out here in the States, and I can come and go as I please, get on an airplane, go to another country. I've got my passport, I can get back in. I've got my social security number, my ID, my birth certificate. Everything that I've always thought were sort of my keys to the kingdom are actually the lock on the prison door of the Matrix. It's just everything that's like upside down world, right? When you start to get into this stuff, it's like everything you thought was good is not, and everything you thought was bad is good. It's totally bizarre.
Well, you're seeing that a lot in the media with all the illegal aliens. Illegal aliens are people who have not pledged allegiance to the United States. But the thing is, I don't think a lot of them are illegal aliens, because the thing is that they're getting all these benefits. So someone who is not a U.S. citizen but pledges allegiance to the United States, who lives outside of the United States, such as in California. I don't live in the United States in California, because the United States is defined as a federal corporation located in the District of Columbia. As a non-citizen national, non-citizen nationals are actually Americans. So illegal aliens are actually Americans. U.S. citizens are the foreigners. And that's why you're seeing all of these foreign aliens and illegal aliens getting all of these benefits from the government. We are treated better by the government. We are at a higher esteem than the government because we are the actual Americans. The quote illegal aliens are actually the real Americans. The U.S. citizens are employees that are located on paper in the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia is not a state of the Union called the United States of America. It is a foreign corporate zone, and its states are the U.S. territories, which are all corporate substates of United States, such as Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, Virgin Islands, etc. That is actually the United States. The United States is Washington, D.C., Guam, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Virgin Islands, and I think one other one. That is United States. And then the United States of America is the unincorporated, independent, sovereign nation states, such as California Republic, or the Crown Colony of Vermont, or the Crown Colony of Connecticut, or the Southwest Territory, which is the original legal common law name for Tennessee. These are all the actual common law non-incorporated locations. Your natural person can be located in California Republic, and your ens legis, or one of your corporations, or one of your trusts, or one of your associations, or one of your partnerships can be located in state of California. Now, Gavin Newsom is the governor of state of California.
He's basically the CEO of that corporation, just like Sleepy Joe is the CEO of the corporation called the United States, located in the District of Columbia. I think a word that seems to come to mind a lot when dealing with this particular topic is the Matrix. There's been a lot of talk about that word, obviously, since that film, and over the past 4 years with all the pandemic insanity and all of this. I mean, people are really looking for a way out. And I think many people use that term as like, God, I'm caught in this matrix, but we don't up until conversations like this, I don't know that we've been able to fully define the matrix. And the way I see it is kind of what I was describing for this duality, where you have this superimposed corporation that's sitting on top of the country, and then you have your birth certificate, false identity, your corporate identity that's kind of sitting on top of you as a living, breathing man or woman. But it gets matrixy really when you think about the DC corporation. Okay, I'm in Texas. Texas is a subcorporation of Washington, D.C., the city of
Texas.
State of Texas, right? State of
is a
Texas.
yeah.
And then you have the city of Austin is another
City of
corporation.
Austin. Yep.
Right? You have Travis
County of, yep.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be
so
Travis
it's like
County, though. It would be County of Travis. Yeah.
So there's layers on layers on layers of all of this commercial law, basically, right? It's all commerce, it's all business. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the entire thing is just based on money. And it seems as though when we're born and assigned to this birth certificate, that very much like the film The Matrix, we're kind of this energy generation machine that is parasitically fed off of all of these layers of corporate entities. They're feeding off our corporate entity, but we're kind of paying the price for that as just a person who wants to just live free and eat, breathe, and contribute to society, right?
Yeah, and the most amazing thing about it, and I think now I'd like to go back to your previous question. This is perfect timing to go to how did this all start and the 14th Amendment and all the good stuff. But to answer that, the real truth is that the most mind-blowing thing of all this is that we live in entirely voluntary. All of this is completely voluntary. Now, that's another one that everyone's going to think I'm full of S, which is fine. It's fine. I thought so too. I went through, years of this, Luke knows, I'm not expecting everyone to swallow this literal 400-pound fish oil pill in 3 seconds, okay? But I am going to say we live in a system that is entirely voluntary. You never, ever once needed to fill out a single tax form. There is absolutely nothing in Title 26 in the Internal Revenue Code that forces you to fill out absolutely any forms at all whatsoever. All forms are voluntary. Once you have volunteered and you are now contracted, now you're in a bit more of an involuntary situation. But the original volunteering was volunteer. Same thing with the banking system. There's a lot of ways you can volunteer in different ways without having to volunteer as a U.S. citizen. You volunteered as a U.S. citizen. You even when you take on a lawyer and you go put in prison, there's bonds that the attorney actually signs on your behalf. You have to actually literally sign yourself and sign your own bonds to go to prison if you do not have a lawyer to sign them for you. So everything in our system, everything, which is exactly why the police make you sign the tickets they give you, everything is voluntary. And you say, well, if you don't sign the tickets, they're going to beat the fuck out of you and, whatever. True. But the thing is that the actual structure, the actual system, the actual law, not the behavior of the police officer. The behavior of the police officer might be outside the confines of the law. When the officer threatens you, that's outside the confines of the law. The way the law actually operates is you are not supposed to be issued a ticket until you agree and verify the fact that the ticket needs to be made. And honestly, truthfully, through the brainwashing system that's so advanced in this country, people are actually okay with it. They get pulled over and the cop says, you're going too fast. And say, oh yeah, you know what? You're right. There's kids. And I shouldn't have been doing that. And you've now volunteered to accept a complaint for breach of contract.
Right.
And this gets complicated because let's say, for example, you have a 35 mile an hour speed limit in a school zone where there's lots of kids. Let's say it's a school zone where like the bus stop's like across the street because the way that the school is structured, it's like they had to put the bus stop over here and then they have to cross the street to get to the actual school itself because the school itself is surrounded by roads and they couldn't get a bus line in there. Now, let's say there's people speeding down that road all the time at going 130 miles an hour in their sports cars with their music blaring. Most people would not like that idea. So the people in the town get together and they voluntarily state that there needs to be this 35 mile an hour speed limit or 15 mile an hour speed limit because there's 5,000 kids going across this stretch of road every night, and they're laughing and they're dropping stuff and they're not paying attention as to this careening, second gen Camaro coming down the road at 400 miles an hour. And then what happens is then the Camaro guy, blah blah blah. So this is a whole philosophical discussion, because you got to think, how does a person, if a 15 mile an hour speed limit is only enforceable because a person naturalized into this corporation that has these traffic laws and it's a breach of contract. If someone wasn't naturalized into these particular traffic laws and they didn't have a driver's license anymore, how would you enforce the fact that all the local people want people going no faster than 20 miles an hour when there's 5,000 kids walking across the street all the time? And that's a valid discussion. The problem is that when somebody gets these tickets, where does the money go? And then like the police, and it's just like there's all these different permutations and all these different directions. And that's kind of where common law is so fascinating, because in a common law world, such as what you see in a lot of the Wild West films, if someone's causing too much gruff, the mothers or the locals get together and they just go shoot the guy. He's dead. Guy comes down the road at 400 miles an hour, careens down the road. The women find out where he's at, and they go and they take broomsticks and crowbars and all the good stuff, and they bash in all those windows, and they bash in his car, and they bash in his sides, and they bash everything in. And they say, "We ever seen you going more than this kind of stuff and this craziness and throwing beer bottles out the window going down this road with these kids? We're going to kick you out of the town with pitchforks and torches and everything else." That was the justice system before. So you have to ask yourself, because we live in a voluntary system, you have to ask yourself, what kind of a system do you want, and what kind of a system do you want to see? Because the thing is that while I'm here telling you all about this system and this commercial system, it's all based on commerce. That's why everything is all fines and fines and fines and fines. It's all commercial based, right? Do you want the system to change? Do you want the system to go away entirely? Do you want this? Because people go, "Oh yeah, this is the best thing ever. We got to get rid of all this." And then they think like second gen Camaro going 400 miles an hour drunk down the school lane. They go, "Oh well, wait a second, maybe we shouldn't." They pump the brakes. You see. So it does go both ways. This is not just a simple throw it out with the bathwater kind of a conversation. This is a larger conversation where what I'm actually asking is, we need a renaissance of people that are interested in governing their own space, their own family, their own town, their own zip code. Maybe just a small portion, maybe a larger portion, but it is a sovereignty. The definition of sovereignty is self-governance. It is a self-governance. It's a governance of self, but it's also a governance of environment. It's a governance of environment to the level in which you would like to step up to govern, okay? Most people don't even have governance of self, let alone governance of their environment. So I know that's asking a lot, but the thing is that that's what this conversation becomes very rapidly.
Well, that, makes me think of the common law definition of a crime, right? There has to be an injured party.
Yes.
And that's a law that I think any thinking, responsible, kind person would adhere to. I'm down with those laws, but what we're dealing with are these layers of statutes and codes that are all based on commerce that are essentially put in place to trip you up, to monetize you. You know what I mean? So that's the thing I think fundamentally that's always appealed to me about the idea of common law is like, yeah, it's the golden rule. Follow the golden rule and you're golden. Like, that's simple. Now, unfortunately, we live in a world where there are a lot of people that are, wounded people that are out of integrity and don't have any interest in following that kind of system. But
yeah,
I tend to lean on the maybe hopeless optimism that there are more good people in the world than there are bad.
Yes.
I think most people don't inherently want to harm other people. And maybe even because we have such a broken system with all these statutes and codes and all this stuff, taxes and all of these oppressive sort of mechanisms in place, that's actually what's impoverishing people and causing more suffering. And the people that are suffering are the ones that end up harming other people and breaking the moral code of society, right? It's like a self-perpetuating loop of destruction. I did want to point to one thing back to the responsibility, right? Of personal responsibility. I think from a metaphysical point of view with this kind of work, this perspective, this renaissance really that we're starting to see bubble up thanks to you largely,
Thank you.
is that I've felt like a victim of the system for most of my life, right? Because I've just been an outlier. I'm someone that just doesn't fit in. I question authority. I don't like the rules that don't make sense. Um, and so for me, there's a very empowering element about taking responsibility for the fact that I have volunteered, albeit unknowingly, and maybe some trickery of legalese, encouraging me to sign documents in a certain way and to identify myself in a certain way legally, or to put myself in a certain location or jurisdiction. Maybe, I was kind of manipulated into volunteering in some cases. But that said, still, I'm the one that put the pen to the paper and said, yes, I'm a US citizen, or yes, I live in the District of Columbia, et cetera. So for me, it's been very freeing to go like, okay, I'm not going to blame myself for doing things that I didn't understand. And I'm also not really going to blame the system. It's very empowering to take responsibility for oneself, because then victimhood starts to evaporate. I don't feel like I'm a victim of the system. I feel motivated to learn how the system works and actually operate according to natural law and according to common law, which is really easy for me to do because I have no interest in harming anyone in any way ever. And if I ever do, I'm very happy to make restitution immediately if I did something by mistake. So it's very freeing. It's super liberating. Aside from just, sending some paperwork off here and there and yay, I don't have to pay taxes. It's like, actually, I feel as we move into this movement that you can actually be an adult, right? And not feel afraid of the system and the government. And even beyond that, not even hate them. It's like they're just operating out of this collective
They don't know.
survival instinct, right?
They have
Because
no
they
idea.
seem to lack creativity and they lack the ability to actually produce things of value and beauty. So they just parasitically sort of siphon on us and get us to sign documents and enter into their world. And we just knowingly do it. And we're also programmed and educated to believe that if you're a good person, that you just play along, right? And if you ask questions and you sort of buck the system and, exit the system, that you're therefore a bad person and this kind of thing. But to me, all this information is just so empowering. And I have less fear of the state. I have less resentment toward the state. And I'm also just kind of patting myself on the back going, well, you didn't know the stuff you were signing your whole life. And now it's time to start educating yourself.
Yeah, the police don't know.
It's actually beautiful.
The people at the bank don't know. The bankers don't know. The senior bankers don't know. I talk to guys with 15, 20, 29 years experience. They don't know. The only people who know to some degree, and they actually aren't even bad people, and they'll help you get all this sorted out, are judges, especially federal judges. They do know, and you think to yourself, well, why aren't they telling everybody? Well, I don't know the answer to that question. It's not necessarily their responsibility, and in a way, they are kind of telling people, because if you were to go in and look at their various cases, which are public information, you can see that they are talking about a lot of these things. Are they on your Instagram feed? No. So one of the big hurdles that I had to go over, and everybody has to go over, is you think that you call into the Department of State and you go see this passport officer down at your local post office, and you think they know all this information. They don't know any of this information. And the ones that behave in a poor way towards you, and they think you're a sovereign citizen, they think in their mind that you are not paying taxes and you're going to live in their country without paying taxes, and you not paying taxes is going to destroy the roads, and you're going to now enjoy the benefits of being an American and enjoy the benefits of nice roads without having to contribute. Their problem is the fact that they think you are now not going to have to contribute to something that they're contributing to and paying for, or they think they're paying for. That's the actual issue.
The crab in the
It's
crab's
a
in the
good
bucket.
thing. No, it's not. I mean, sorry. It's no, it's not that thing. It's actually a good thing. the way that they think and the way they behave is actually a good thing. They don't want people in their mind not contributing to the beneficial aspects of their society. They want their local roads in their mind to be properly paved and fixed so that other people, a mother with her children, does not hit a giant effing pothole and careen off the side of the road and her children die in her minivan. They may not go that far in their own mind, but that's essentially what these people are thinking. And when you understand that, you understand that these people mean well. They actually mean good things. They actually intend good things. And they think that the thing that you're doing or trying to do is going to harm other good people. That's what they're upset about.
Like not wearing a mask. People that believe that were, some of them had the best of intentions.
That's
they were just ill-informed.
It's okay. It's okay. I don't get mad about that. I don't get mad about nothing anymore. Because the thing is that when you understand where they're coming from and you understand how they think, you realize, like you said before, I don't think I've ever met a single bad person in my entire life. I don't think. Maybe. Everyone's trying so hard to do what they think is the best and to help people the best they can and to do the best thing that they can and to make sure that other people are taken care of. And everyone has a different sphere of reality of what that is. A lot of people are like, I can only care about myself. Some people, I can only care about my family. That's enough for me. Some people want to go beyond that, and you can judge them or whatever, but that's not really your place. It's not really our place to judge people, in my opinion. So the thing is it's our place to, and it's not I'm a member of the Amirati, which I take very seriously, which is a men's fraternity that has to do with, understanding what it means to be a man in this world and walk through this world as a man, especially in our relationship with women and beauty. And Zanpirian wrote a book called The Alabaster Girl, which is the basis of our group. And one of the things she says in there is that the only real sin there is in all of humanity is obligation. And the thing is that I believe that. I actually completely believe that. The only real sin there is an obligation. You have such a serious obligation towards something, and then it becomes this very unfun activity. It solidifies the activity, and it pulls all the creativity and joy out of whatever it is that you're doing, and it sort of kills, I guess you could say, anything that it touches, because it's like a disease. Obligation is a disease, and I know that there are many people, like in the military, which is a main demographic that I was thinking of when you were speaking earlier about. You want to talk about people who are pissed off about this information, who hate themselves, who literally go through suicidal thoughts about this situation. I'm not going to say that word. It's the military. When the military found out about this, and then they think that I worked for that, I pushed that, I did that. Now I will say something. It's they say the word duty. Duty and obligation are two very different things. Okay, duty. I have a duty for what I do. I enjoy my duty. I feel honor from my duty, but it's not an obligation. Obligation is a different word. It's a negative word. It's something that you feel chained to, that you may not really want to have an involvement with. Duty is something that not only do you want to be involved with, but it's an extreme pride point, and it's actually one of the most important aspects of your life. And you feel like without that specific thing, you wouldn't even be who you are identity-wise. And for me, someone like me, I wouldn't even want to live without my duty. So the thing is that duty is a very positive, empowering thing, whereas obligation is the opposing force of that, in my opinion. Now, when you're talking about people going through some stuff, when it comes to this information, military goes through extreme difficulties with this information, because they go through this whole, like, I pushed this, I fought for this, I killed for this whole weird craziness that I had no idea, right? Now, what's so beautiful about that, just as a side point, in case any of your people here are military, I love the military very much, and I have a lot of military in my family, and police as well. The people who turn, who are military and police and all these different things, they become the most dangerous adversaries. They have a bone to pick, and they are the kinds of people that really make some very big motions in this type of stuff very rapidly, because they feel very fired up I'm not a violent person. I'm strongly against violence, but it's almost to that level with these kinds of people that are sort of the turncoats. The turncoats are actually some of my favorite people. The military with 20 years experience who find this information and cry for 2 months straight and debate if they're going to lay on train tracks or hang themselves by kicking a chair out from underneath their body. These people, when they convert, I should say, they become a massive force to be reckoned with. So I will say at the same time, while we're on this subject, for people out there who might be hearing these things and going down these rabbit holes or want to go down these rabbit holes, don't allow whatever it is that's happened in your past to overwhelm you now. I would strongly recommend that you focus on your future and what's happening now. And like I said, the you can use your past as fuel to fuel your future. And when I see people do that fit these categories, it's I mean, these people change the world. These people are mountain movers. So it goes both ways. I mean, people like you and me, it's like, oh yeah, I paid some taxes, whatever. But then you have guys that have 15 years of service. It's like, oh boy, that's a rough one. You know what I mean?
Unknowingly advocating and enforcing the system is a whole other level of regret than just going along with it and volunteering yourself into it unknowingly and then going, oops, wow, this kind of sucks to be robbed of 80% of my resources for the energy that I put into the world. You're actually, enforcing that around the world on behalf of the state. I'm
telling you, I've seen a lot of that. It's dark. These guys go through some darkness. And for people who want to try to explain this stuff to their Marine grandpa, their Marine father, tread lightly. Yeah. I mean, you could literally explain this to someone in a way where they would literally go into their gun and whiskey room and end themselves.
There's layers of identity, right? It's like we form our self-worth and our duty, our purpose out of our identity. And it's got to be a nightmare to realize that the identity that you've been motivated by was one that was essentially fraudulently hoisted upon you by a system that knew how to do that to get you on board,
And the thing is that you are dealing with confusion and brainwashing on a level that is so advanced and so professional, and the amount of money poured into the media and they control Hollywood just so they can say words like U.S. citizen and just so they can say words like my country and just so they can program these little words into all these different TV shows and everything else. And the programming is so that the programming system is a multi-trillion, every single direction, all newspapers, all media, all video games, all TV shows, all movies, all everything is programmed and paid. And there's this gigantic, massive, humongous structure that costs millions or billions of dollars a day to sustain, to make sure that you are using the correct words, using the correct incantation, and volunteering into the system. And the thing is that the chances that anyone could have figured this out or walked through this or seen this or handled this or noticed this is so low. And the professionality and the focus and the desire and the investment into what has gone into what we experience on a daily basis in this country is so overwhelming and so crushing and designed to be so overwhelming and so crushing that human beings just do not stand a chance. They just don't. Period.
Can you take us back to the 14th Amendment to create a little context for how we ended up in this? There's these certain, I mean, I'm sure a lot of it's very old, but to me, the 1871, the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, the gold standard in 33 or 35, there's a few key points where the system really sunk its teeth into us, collectively.
Yeah.
And that the 14th Amendment one is one that really that one irks me, because when most people think of the 14th Amendment, they think of freeing the slaves, right? And most people don't realize that when that was done, there were a number of people in the country that wanted it, and there were a number of people that didn't want it. So they sort of, seems to me like they compromised and just went, hey, we'll just create this second class of citizen. And this works so well, let's just start applying it to everyone, and calling everyone U.S. citizens and creating what we have now, which is kind of free-range slavery and voluntary servitude, but involuntary servitude was made illegal. Can you kind of frame that for us? Because I find that piece really interesting.
Oh, yeah. So after the Civil War, during the Reconstruction of the Civil War, 1865-ish through like 1871-ish. That time period is a really important time period. The Organic Act of 1871 is when the government was changed into an incorporated version of the government. And if you look in the Organic Act of 1871, the carrot or cookie that was put out in an effort to justify the incorporating and converting of the government was the free public school system. So all the people out there, all the angry moms and all this, angry dads, that are angry at the public school system and how it works and how it operates, that all started in 1871. And that actually was the backbone, the full-blown spinal cord of the ushering in of the entire incorporated system of the United States. During that time period, it was a little bit before that time period. I think it was around 1865, 1866, 1867, right around that time period is also when they redefined the word person to include legal fictions. All of that happened around that same time period. So the word person and the incorporated superstate was all created around that same time period after the country was all beat up from fighting itself internally over the southern states and northern states over the subject of slavery. Who knows if it was even for that? I don't know. So 1871, you have the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment alludes to there being multiple types of citizenship, two different types, right? In 1871, there was a series of Supreme Court cases called the slaughterhouse cases, where what they did is they interpreted the 14th Amendment for the first time. What happened was they determined and interpreted that the 14th Amendment was actually referring to the fact that there's two different types of citizens. At that time, it was called the federal citizen and the state citizen. Now, from the research that I've done, I think, and this part is sort of Brandon's opinion, educated opinion, my professional opinion on why this is and how it happened was they wanted to end the war, but there were still many, many, many people that did not want slavery to be abolished. So what the government did is they said, look, no problem. We're going to create this federal citizen category. And a federal citizen is essentially going to be a volunteer employee or officer of this new corporation that we're creating. And we'll call it a federal citizen, and they won't have the full rights of what they called at that time during the slaughterhouse cases, a state citizen. And you can look up the slaughterhouse cases online. I'm not going to dig into all of it. It's a lot. It'll slow down the podcast like 100x. So that's something that we'll just talk about, and you can look it up for yourself. The slaughterhouse cases, you can look up lots and lots of information on it. You can see lots of information, them talking about the interpretation of the 14th Amendment and federal citizen, state citizen. So the federal citizen category over the years, I don't know when, became the U.S. citizen category. The state citizen category became the national category or non-citizen national category. Now it's complicated because they don't say specifically state citizen. You would say national of California Republic. And that's the exact specific word for word technical way that you would say somebody who lives in the unincorporated nation state called California and is not involved in the corporate state called State of California. You would say a national of the California Republic. That person would not be a U.S. citizen. That person would be a non-citizen national. And when you look in Title 26, just to really quickly, I don't want to get into this too much. It's very simple and it just take 2 seconds. A citizen of the United States is a taxpayer and has a tax liability. A non-citizen, such as a non-citizen national, does not have a tax liability and is not a taxpayer, which has a special definition. Taxpayer is found in Title 26, Section 7701, subsection A14. I have it all memorized. Definition of taxpayer is any person who is subject to any internal revenue tax. Now, when you go into all the frivolous arguments section of the IRS, which a lot of people get sent, let's say you want to go and tell your family about all this information, they're going to go online, they're going to go to the IRS website, and they're going to find this section called the frivolous tax arguments section. It's going to say there are taxpayers that believe that they don't live in the District of Columbia and it's called the United States. Now, if you click Control F for the find feature, you type in the word taxpayer, you'll see it used 95 times all the way down throughout all the frivolous arguments. The word taxpayer is a person who is subject to any internal revenue tax. So what they're saying throughout all of the frivolous arguments section of the website is there are people who do have a tax liability stating that they don't have a tax liability. A non-citizen national is not a taxpayer by definition. It is not someone who is subject to any internal revenue tax. But they write it in a way where it seems like they're talking about everybody. They're not talking about everybody. They're talking about taxpayers.
Well, I think that's a big distinction. And to me, the taxes are just so wrong. And we can get into that more. But I think when people from the outside hear about this approach to living, they think that you just, if you change your status, you just stop paying taxes. But the definition here is more that you are no longer classified as a taxpayer, therefore you don't have a tax liability. So it's not just that you're not paying taxes, that you're not legally required, if you're classified in a certain way, to even file tax returns, let alone pay them.
And
that's really difficult for people to get their head around, because we've been so indoctrinated by, the morality of, well, who's going to pay for the roads? All of this kind of thinking. And you can tell us in a bit where our tax money actually goes. It doesn't go to the roads. Spoiler alert.
And I feel like we've gone down this far enough to where I feel like I really should show this. I just
all right, let's do it.
Have a bit of a duty, not an obligation. Once we start talking about things for more than a split second, I feel like I should show them. So for the purposes of this is from a different body of law called the Code of Federal Regulations, otherwise known as CFR. So Title 26 of the CFR is the same as Title 26 in the United States Code. It has to do with the Internal Revenue Code, IRC. Okay? So Title 26 CFR Section 1.871-1. For purposes of the income tax, alien individuals are divided generally into two classes, namely resident aliens and non-resident aliens. Now, it's very simple. We're gonna read the rest of this. It's really not that hard to understand, but it's really simple. Resident aliens of what? Resident aliens of United States. Where is the United States located? In the District of Columbia. Where in the District of Columbia? No one knows. No one knows. There's probably, who knows? Maybe literally no one ever even tried to know. No, maybe it's literally never been described ever, and nobody really knows at all. Maybe there really isn't an answer to the question where in the District of Columbia is located. Who knows? You could ask that if you're in a lawsuit and there's discovery, and you ask where is the United States located within the territorial boundaries of Washington D.C. You may never, ever, ever get, there may literally on this planet may not be an answer to that question, okay? A non-resident alien individual is somebody who does not live in United States, which is an unknown location inside of the District of Columbia, okay? So let's get back into this. We'll finish this up. Resident alien individuals are, in general, taxable the same as citizens of the United States, meaning people who are employees or officers of the federal corporation, okay? Non-resident alien individuals are taxable only on certain income from sources within the United States. Now, this is where things get complicated. And this is the same thing as the definition of naturalization. So I have naturalization memorized. I'm gonna reread it to you from my head. Title 8, Section 1101, subsection A23. Naturalization is the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person after birth. Upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. Now you'll see here, they're saying the exact same thing here. So I'm going to read this. This is now a quote, back to the quote from 26 CFR 1.871-1. However, non-resident alien individuals may elect to be treated as U.S. residents for purposes of determining their income tax liability. So once you naturalized into state of California or state of Texas or United States, you were a non-resident alien individual who then elected to be treated as a U.S. resident for purposes of determining your income tax liability through the power of naturalization. You were not a taxpayer until you did that. Once you did that, you became a taxpayer. You became a taxpayer through what's called the election. And we have a process that's located in the Internal Revenue Code because, again, we live in a voluntary system. And this is an entirely voluntary situation. It's an entirely voluntary contract. I can prove that. We've got 26, I believe it's CFR 601.602. Could be wrong, but if it's not, we're going to find it in 10 seconds. Here we are. 26, let me just verify that. 26 CFR 601.602, subsection A. And it's the final sentence of subsection A. It says as following: the tax system is based on voluntary compliance, and the taxpayers complete and return the forms with payment of any tax owed.
Mind-blowing.
And just for those people who I was saying the definition of the word taxpayer earlier for the video people, little bonus for you, we will pull that up right here so that way it's not just me talking. This is 26 USC, which is the Internal Revenue Code. Title 26 of the United States Code is the Internal Revenue Code. I will prove that as well. Scroll down to Title 26, Internal Revenue Code. Title 26, Section 7701, subsection A14 says here, taxpayer. The term taxpayer means any person subject to any internal revenue tax. The word person is clickable. It's going to take me to 26 USC 7701 subsection 1, A1. The term person shall be construed to mean and include an individual, a trust, estate, partnership, association, company, or corporation.
Wow.
So the tax code is extremely complicated. It goes on and on and on for thousands and thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands, who knows, maybe even hundreds of thousands of pages. I just explained to you the entire tax code. You really don't even need to know anything more about the tax code at all. It's that simple.
That is just so wild. It's like I was saying earlier, it's so interesting how this is so complex, but at the same time, it's also so simple that you can't believe it's true.
Yeah.
It's just
That's exactly right.
It's so interesting. There are a few things in life like that, right? Usually if something's complicated, it's just by default that way, and you really have to work hard to figure it out. And then there's some things that are just so simple that are just almost unbelievable. It's insane. So a few years ago, I did an experiment when I was a U.S. citizen, and I had voluntarily signed all of this documentation my entire life, and I was saving money. And so I just, for the first time in my life, filed my tax returns, my personal and corporate return, and just didn't pay the taxes to the state franchise in California or the IRS. federally. And I just thought, I'll deal with it later. I'll get a few fines and some interest, and it is what it is. And I didn't get around to paying it for a few months. And next thing I know, California actually just went in my bank account and just took the money. It's insane.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, they really do that. It was so interesting, and I had an attorney that, called them and kind of fixed it up, and then I paid it off. But, why that happened was because I volunteered to be a taxpayer and to be a U.S. citizen and to be a resident of the state of California, the corporation. So at the time, of course, I was pissed, like, how dare they? That's my money. I'll get to it when I get to it. And looking back now with, learning what I'm learning here with you and some other people, it's like, well, I'm the one that sent in the tax return and said, hey, I'm a taxpayer. I've done the accounting. This is how much I owe you. But hey, guess what? I'm not going to pay you. And they didn't like that at all. Whereas on the flip side of that, what you're describing here is a way of living where you're not actually indicating yourself to be a taxpayer or a U.S. citizen because you've corrected your status and so on, as we talked about earlier. And therefore, not only would they have no legal grounds for that, but they wouldn't be even inspired to try to do that because you're out of that jurisdiction, I guess would be one way of saying that. Do I have
are a
that
taxpayer,
right?
you have no tax liability. A taxpayer has a tax liability. So if you don't have no tax liability, you are not a taxpayer, period. End of story.
Right. So over the past few years, we've seen insane levels of censorship, right? With all of this medical stuff going on and the clot shots and God knows what. And, it's eased up a little in certain cases, but I notice I'll do certain episodes and they'll get pulled down by YouTube. In fact, today I got an email from YouTube saying we've deleted your interview with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They didn't like that one. It was early in 2020, and they finally got rid of that one. And there are other things that you can't talk about, or you'll be censored. If you start questioning the moon landing or a number of different things, your content on social media will just be yanked. What I find so interesting is that information like this is left alone. I mean, to me, this is like more dangerous to the state than somebody talking about what kind of injections one should get or not. Have you seen any suppression of these ideas and this information at all?
No, and it's very, very simple. This is a great observation, and it's very, very simple. The way that I operate, I have a lot of PR training. I have warfare PR training. I have massive marketing sales background. So everything that I do is very, very carefully constructed, even though it may seem like a totally insane 7-year-old put it together. It was very thought out. But the my formula for success is very, very simple. It's always make people feel good. So that means that if it's a liberal, if it's a conservative, if it's this, if it's that, now you got to understand, I was a Trump conservative, bang the drum person for a long time, screaming from the hilltops, the whole 9 yards. This was from probably 2020 all the way up until I started studying this stuff. So mid 2021, something like that, right? And I felt a little bad about it. Once I started learning about all this, I go, I didn't necessarily start doing all this out of some sort of a reparation, but there definitely was a little bit of that in my world that I thought about during that time period. But again, it's a difficult self-reflection situation because I got sucked into something that was a world-class, totally well put together, multi-trillion-dollar international brainwashing campaign that I didn't stand a chance. So, it's a difficult situation, and I think that always make people feel good no matter where they're at on that. Like, for example, when we did the Andy Kaufman show, he was talking about TRANS people, right? And he was speaking about them as, maybe something a little bit confrontational and this and that. And I changed that discussion to these people that are doing this. The thing is that in law, only men and women have rights, right? So So what's happening is the people who behave that way and do those things, they are burning their own rights, and they're saying, I don't have human rights because I am not, as per the definition in the law, as a human, which is defined as either a man or a woman. The problem with that is that these people deserve to know that they are eliminating their own humanity, their own human rights in the eyes of the law. Now, if someone knows that information and they still decide to do whatever it is that they're doing, that's on them at that point, right? But I feel like I prefer to move the conversation in a way that empowers the person in that position rather than diminishes and destroys the only demographic in the whole world that you'll ever hear me as much as I try, you may see a couple things here and there, but as much as I try, there's only one demographic in the world that I just love to just pee on. Okay. Can you guess who that is?
Sovereign citizens?
Nope. Nope. I don't even mind those people.
Who?
Lawyers.
Oh, right. Of course. Yeah, of course.
That's the only one. If it's a lawyer, let's go, bro. Let's go. I'll talk about it all day long. I'll pull my pants down and take a big poop right here. Anything else, I try to and I'm not, it's not the end of the world. Like I'm doing the Dr. Graves, how to win in court.com. He's a lawyer, 35 years, fantastic course. It's not, I think most lawyers are horrible, to say the truth. And I assume they are horrible more rapidly than I will assume that they are not. I am not closing the door on them. But everybody else, judge, police, jail officer, TRANS people, you name it, GAY, I don't care. I don't care what, liberal, this, that, I don't care. I really don't care. I mean, I'm in California. The amount of times I've heard liberals upset about the situation and starting to question their own beliefs and angry at what's going on and not have no clue where to go and what to turn, because in their mind, the only other option is Trump, and they're not going to do that. So they just don't know what the F to do, but they're definitely not interested in what they're doing anymore. It's just everyone's frustrated. Everyone's angry. Everyone's frustrated. Everyone wants change and answers. And the cool thing about what we're doing and what I'm doing and what you're now doing is that this gigantic pressurized explosive political scene is starting to bleed off into this zone. This is where all that pressure is going. And the bigger that we educate and the faster we educate and the more content that we create, such as this podcast, the more that we're offering people a pressure valve of which they can choose to select, whether they're liberal, whether they're TRANS, whether they're gay, whether they're straight, whether they're bi, whether they're conservative, whether they're Trump, whether they're MAGA, it doesn't matter. Insert into the box whatever it is that you want to insert in the box. It doesn't matter. Lawyers are the only ones that can come in. Tread carefully, my friends, because you are not particularly excited members of this group. But we'll accept you if you prove yourself. But you're going to have a little bit of a more difficult time. But I'd rather be upfront about that. Besides that, we've all been lied to. We've all been screwed. And as far as I'm concerned, the only people who were close enough to the scene to see what was going on, close enough to the scene to possibly do something about the situation, are the lawyers. Even the judges, I just don't, your average federal judge has a 600 caseload. I don't even know how they have a personal life. I don't know how they don't lose themselves in drugs and alcohol, being involved in such insane craziness and the way that lawyers behave. They are so outrageous and they are so unacceptable with their behavior. It's unbelievable. I don't even know how judges keep themselves from going insane, frankly. So that's just kind of how I feel about the situation,
Well, I love that perspective, man. It's team humanity, right? It's like what we need now, I think, as a civilization, as a society in this state, in this country rather, and other countries around the world, is unity, man. Unity is where the power is, but you're never going to get unity when you have people that are ideologically so opposed, right? You're not going to convince a Portland liberal that he should be agreeing with the Alabama MAGA guy, truck driver. There's never going to be a meeting of the minds, right? And it's like, why even try? I feel this movement is a real middle ground because it's like, hey, let's follow the golden rule.
Yeah.
Let's get ourselves out from under the boot of this fraudulent, corrupt system and support and help one another. And it's really doesn't matter what your political beliefs, your social behaviors, ideologies, none of that actually means anything in this space. It's just, hey, let's become free. And every human being to some degree values freedom, right? And what does that even mean? And to me, this seems like a path right down the middle way that it just negates all of that bullshit that's so divisive and just says, hey, for those that are willing to put in the time to really, you really have to study this stuff is what I'm learning. I'm not just like going and pulling the trigger on all this. I'm really putting hours and hours. Like I said, I'm only up to lesson 14 in your 39-part course, which by the way, guys, I highly recommend, and we'll link to it in the show notes. Let's put those show notes at lukestorey.com/Brandon. But you have to kind of have a passion to learn this stuff. But other than that, putting in some time and due diligence, it's like there's nothing that's controversial about it whatsoever from my perspective. It's just like, wow, we got to take responsibility. We unknowingly volunteered ourselves into some things that are very unfair and unjust. And no one's going to come and hold our hand. No president is going to come and save us. I don't care who it is.
Precisely.
It's up to us to free ourselves and to save ourselves. And that has to do with, like we talked about earlier, personal responsibility. And like, okay, man, I don't want to put in the time studying this stuff. But if I ever want to become truly free, metaphysically and physically in the world, I don't really see another way out of it. That brings me to another funny point because you mentioned Donald Trump. I was watching a David Straight video the other day, which again, I'm watching this video. It's the Utah course, by the way, Jared, if you want to put that in the show notes. Fantastic information. And I'm watching that on YouTube going, why isn't this being censored? Like, this is such powerful information, but who knows? I guess.
Well, there's two things on that because I was going to finish that thought.
Okay.
So number one is make people feel good. Don't alienate people and attack people for some political whatever. That's number one, I think. Number two is obviously, without question, my material is mind-blowingly valuable. My material, quote unquote, is just me showing definitions and terms from straight out of the thing.
And it's free, folks.
And it's free.
Stuff is free.
I don't charge for anything except if you want to go into mainline litigation and you want to hire me for massive litigation and that kind of thing. Obviously, that's mind-blowingly expensive. But besides that, everything else is free all the way down. It's the Dan S. Pena, who I love so dearly. He's my favorite business coach ever. It's the Dan S. Pena style where everything's free all the way down, including his book. And then it's just the top tier, extremely wildly expensive one single thing at the very top, right? So I really like that model. I love Dan S. Pena. Very huge section of my business training and my mentality. And I just love him so much. And I love he talks a lot about it being the most stress-free model and it being just a very beautiful model. And he says it more colorful language. But so the second thing is, when you tie everything down, like David Straight, I love him to death. He's a great guy. He's one of the originals. Without him, a lot of us wouldn't be here. The thing I do that's different than a lot of these other guys is I want to show everything, and I want to say every single word perfectly, and I want every single definition of every word that could possibly be misconstrued to be defined on the spot, like you saw me in this, right? So how can a fact checker ever hope to touch me? It's a physical impossibility. I am the only guy on the planet, pretty much. I don't know of anybody else really at all, anywhere, on any field, whether it's my field or the medical field or anything. Medical field is tough because there's so much weirdness. My field is literally just so groundable that when I ground everything out to the level that I ground it out, fact checkers can't come near me. I am like a full-blown disease zone to them. They can't come near me. They can't touch me. They can't touch. I am immune to all fact checking. And then you have the haters and my entire platform is one stupid FUCK, right? So that's all a big joke. It's a self-deprecating antagonism-based branding that I created. It's very unique. You can't touch me. You can call me whatever you want. I'm just going to laugh and then take whatever you said and publish it, and we're all just going to laugh at you. I show everything. I show the definitions of everything. I go to the original all the time, constantly. If I can't share the screen, I'm like sweating. I know almost everything I know. I've repeated it to myself like I'm some kind of lunatic over and over and over again, thousands and thousands of times while I'm brushing my teeth and eating food and walking around town. And I don't even want to think about it. I'm like, no, I need to say this particular statute to myself 1,500 times so I can memorize it forever. What in God's name? And then on top of that, now I'm litigating against everybody under the sun, moon, and stars. And I pull the litigation trigger like I'm the most trigger happy human being walking the earth. Nobody wants to come near me, bro. Nobody wants to come within 1,000,000 miles of me. And I kind of developed all this prior. I kind of developed all this with that kind of forethought in place. Like, how am I going to not get deplatformed? And how am I going to get the younger audience? And how am I going to get fact checked? And how am I going to get, all these things? And I just kind of, some of the stuff I developed based off of those questions, and some of the stuff I developed just because a lot of what I do and how crazy I am about the definitions of words and what it all means and how it all puts together. That's how I wish somebody would have taught me too. It's kind of like a golden rule kind of thing. Do unto others as you would like to be done unto you. I teach in the way that I wish somebody would have taught me. I mean, God, if I would have had this sort of an explanation and this sort of teaching style for myself, it would have been very life-changing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's another, and that makes a lot of sense, actually. You can't really be fact-checked if your facts are verifiable. That's
constantly,
one piece.
yeah.
Another thing that I think is really cool about the way you're presenting this information in your course specifically, and I'm someone that learns from listening and watching more so than reading, which makes this a little difficult for me because really you got to be quite a reader to really get this stuff. But in your course, I'm going through it and I'm pausing as you're screen sharing, showing how you fill out a certain document or not. I'm literally like, I have the document over here. I pause the video. I'm doing it. You're showing a very tactical approach to this. It's not just like theoretical. Like I love that David Straight Utah video, but it's very much like an overview. It's on like the concepts, the history. I mean, it's really beautiful information, but and I haven't watched every single one. I probably threw 3 or 4 of those videos, but he's not pausing and going, okay, we're going to break out the DS11 passport application and this is how you fill it out, right? It's like in your course, it's literally step by step, every single thing that you do if you're someone that, is feeling strongly about going in this direction. Yeah. What I was going to bring up about that video, though, that was interesting because you reminded me of Donald Trump. In that video, David Straight says, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase, he says, oh, Donald Trump knows all of this stuff, this 14th Amendment stuff, U.S. citizen, what we've been talking about today. And he says in the video that Donald Trump corrected his status in 2007 or whenever it was, and that he's trying to actually get in office and expose this and shake things up, which, I don't know if that's true or not. His last efforts at Operation Warp Speed were a dismal and very deadly failure, in my opinion. But
he had 4 years. All he had to do is here we are, 2 hours. We're 2 hours and 16 seconds into this, and he could have told you all this, or even 1/10 of this, or even a tiny bit, or even just about naturalization. He could have told you any of this information if he knew it. And he didn't. And I think that he doesn't actually know a lot of this information.
I mean, that's the thing to me when it comes to politics. Now it's all complete. I'm not that I believed any of it anyway. It's all theater and left and right. It's like, two masks on the same face, right? Now it's so like white noise to me, unless and until a politician comes forward and says, hey, let's repeal the 14th Amendment. Let's keep the 13th Amendment there so that no one can enslave anyone.
Yes.
Let's nuke the 14th Amendment. Country fixed. I mean, it's to me, it's that simple.
Well, check this out.
And none of them talk about any of this. Even, I love RFK Jr. He was on the show. I found him to be a very authentic, beautiful guy. I really enjoyed my time. Went to his house. I spent half a day there. I mean, he was awesome. but he has a platform. He's got a voice. He's not talking about this. And he's someone I would consider to be one of the more trustworthy of the, people in the ring. No politicians will touch this. And I know some of them have to know it. So I'm just like, you're white noise. You mean nothing to me until you start talking about this information publicly.
So first and foremost, I do not believe that Donald Trump is a bad person at all, not even in the slightest. I think he's a very good person. I think he does care very, very much about a lot of things and a lot of people, and he does love humanity. And I think that RFK fits the same category. And I can only assume, because I think that Donald Trump has a huge, monstrous breast set of balls as well. So I can only assume that if he knew this information, everyone who finds out this information and learns this information in a coherent way, you couldn't stop them from telling you if you had a gun in their mouth.
100%.
They're telling their family and their friends and their job, and every single person that comes back to me says, everyone's left my life. Everyone thinks I'm insane. And I've lost all my friends and my job and my family. It's always the same story because I went through the same thing. So you got to think, if he knew with how much he likes being in the limelight and how big his ballsack really is, you think he wouldn't say something, even if it's like kind of alluding to it? You don't think he would say it in a way that might not be totally direct, but you don't think he would say something about it? I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
I know. That was my thought when I heard David Straight say that. I thought, man, I mean, how could he keep quiet about it? Because he's not a man that has an easy time holding his tongue. You know what I mean?
That's what I mean, right? And then just real quick, in 1967, I have it up on the screen here, but for the audio listeners, if you look in, and I don't even really know how to even find this. Someone sent me this, which was mind-blowing, but I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. So it's a congressional record. It's proceedings and debates of the 90th Congress. It's the first session. It's a volume 113, part 12, June 12th, 1967 to June 20th, 1967. This is page 15641. It says here, the 14th Amendment, is it a protection law or tool of usurpation?
Whoa.
Whereas the Reconstruction Acts of Congress unlawfully overthrew their existing governments, removed their lawfully constituted legislatures by military force, and replaced them with rump legislators, which carried out military orders and pretended to ratify the 14th Amendment.
Whoa.
This is Congress saying this.
Whoa.
And we have here the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional. The purported 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution is and should be held to be ineffective, invalid, null, void, and unconstitutional for the following reasons. And then there's reason number one. The joint resolution proposing said amendment was not submitted to or adopted by a constitutional Congress. This is a bit above my head. I'm just going to read this, but I would need to go and dig into what all this means. Okay, number two, the joint resolution was not submitted to the president for his approval. Number three, which is highlighted on this screen. Three, the proposed 14th Amendment was rejected by more than 1/4 of all the states then in the Union, and it was never ratified by 3/4 of all the states in the Union. So the 14th Amendment is unique in a way that it doesn't actually even effing exist.
That's insane, dude. And
so not only does the 14th Amendment, I said that for a long time too. Oh, it needs to be pulled. It needs to be, it actually doesn't. It actually is already non-existent. It needs to be acknowledged as already non-existent. Do you realize if the 14th Amendment was realized and acknowledged as non-existent, this is what would happen. The Federal Reserve Bank would disappear. The United States Citizen Classification would disappear. The FBI would disappear. The CIA would disappear. The police would disappear.
Policy enforcers.
The United States Corporation would disappear. Everything would vanish. Now, what would we have left? If the 14th Amendment was acknowledged to have never been correctly whatever, so basically through fraud, so it doesn't actually exist even now, doesn't actually exist at all. If it was simply acknowledged being in that condition, the condition of which it is, which is non-existent, we'd have the Wild West all over again. Boom, instantaneously. You'd have the sheriff's office, and you'd have national currency issued by each individual state. You'd have the California currency, you'd have the Utah currency, and those currencies would be stamped gold and silver coins. And banking would be reduced to almost non-existent. Instantly. Every single person in all of North America would instantaneously regain all of their Bill of Rights, all of their human rights, and the entire Constitution instantly. All concealed carry permits would instantly vanish. All serial numbers for firearms, well, firearms wouldn't exist because if you look at the Second Amendment, it says nothing about firearms. Firearms is actually a corporate term. The correct term would be arms. So firearms would cease to exist entirely as a term in law. The only term that would apply at that point in time from that point forward is the term arms. The CFR would vanish. The USC would vanish. The UCC would vanish because I believe it's only in America that they call it the UCC. It's in other countries and other names. All of it would instantaneously, overnight, completely vanish. All the prisons would be emptied out except people who had swindled, murdered, harmed, stolen, crashed, drunk. Those would be the only things that would be left in the prison system. So 80, 90, 92, 94% of the entire prison system would be vacated instantaneously.
Right. All of the people found guilty of victimless crimes.
All of this would occur. And I would say the same thing. I don't hate the FBI. I don't hate the CIA. These people can go and they can work in the sheriff's office. Okay. They can become sheriff's deputies and they can be very, very hard. And we can have this massive, humongous, gigantic sheriff's office that's very, 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 very strong on victim crimes. Anywhere there's a victim, you've got a swarm of huge burly men coming down on them with machine guns. Instantly, rawr. You could have that. You don't need to just wipe out the FBI and wipe out the CIA and leave these people on the side of the road. You don't need to do that. You can transfer all these people into the sheriff's office and they can operate as constitutional deputies. And they hear on the phone that grandma's a victim of something and they're rolling 10 deep with a fucking SWAT truck. You know what I mean? It's okay. That's fine. Everyone would be happy with that. If that it's like the fire department. The fire department doesn't roll up all slow. No, they roll up 100 guys. There's ladders. Everybody's freaking out. You know, all these burly men. You know, this fire needs to get taken out, and it needs to get taken out right now. If the sheriff's office was massive and everybody from all these different agencies was all transferred into the sheriff's office, they're all bored, sitting around. They get one call saying, you know, grandma's in trouble and, you know, they're crashing through the windows with machine guns and body armor and no one's ever going to do anything to anybody anymore. And then, you know, very rapidly, though, that kind of a situation is going to get boring for the sheriff's office because then in about 10 minutes, there's not going to be any crime anymore because anybody hurts anybody else and they've got 416 AR rifles in their mouth. You know, so it's sort of a self-defeatist situation as well because then you take all those and you put them into the sheriff's office and then within 2 weeks, crime doesn't exist anymore. Now what? Now what are they going to do? Now you got thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of guys that all want to have some fun and enjoy their thing and they want crime because without crime, they don't have no reason to exist. That's going to be a weird situation. So it's kind of a self-defeating prophecy where, oh yeah, you know, transfer all the FBI and the CIA into the sheriff's office. Oh yeah, that'll last about 10 minutes. but then then at that point you have a crimeless world. So it depends. It depends as a police officer or a sheriff, because it's two different things entirely. Sheriff's on the unincorporated side, and police is on the corporate side, the commercial side. Do you really want a crimeless society? And if you had a crimeless society, would you be terribly bored, like what you see in a lot of the old Wild West movies, where the sheriff doesn't really do much of anything? Because the thing is that if you repeal the 14th Amendment, that's what you're going to get. If the 14th Amendment doesn't already exist. So if you acknowledge the 14th Amendment as already not existing and remove its supposed illusionary ghost of it being existing, that's what you're going to get.
Wild. Yeah, I'm thinking about the old West, right, with the hangings in town square. When somebody murders someone, the whole town goes down to watch them hang, and crime starts to subside real quick. Yeah.
That's what you're going to get, especially when you got 30,000 burly men with machine guns and body armor and cars. It's not one guy on a horse with a 6-shooter. It's a SWAT van and body armor and all this stuff, and they're bored out of their mind, and they get a call, and they're gonna roll 35 deep on these people. I mean, it's going to be horrifying. I mean, there's not going to be one broken window on a car from here to Timbuktu. It's just not going to. You're going to have helicopters, and it's like, oh, helicopters, getting rust on it. Might as well fire it up. You know what I mean? You want to talk about toxic masculinity. I mean, that's masculinity. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get one phone call, and you have an army coming down on these people. Literally, like a standing army coming down on these people.
100%.
It's not going to be like the Wild West where you got one guy on horseback, and he puts down his whiskey bottle to go roll across town and lasso somebody. It's going to be especially if everyone from the CIA and FBI and like it does get transferred into the sheriff's office. It's going to be like. It's going to be crazy. You're not going to have any. There's not going to be any crime. It's just not going to exist anymore. Period. And then they're going to get bored, and that's not good. But that's just how this is going to work. Honestly.
Well, the second I hear one politician, aka lawyer, because most of them are lawyers, come forward with this proposal, I'm on board. Unless and until then, I'm out. I'm really not interested. I'm interested in the work you're doing and helping people become free.
Yeah.
I want to ask you something real quick, and then we'll start to wrap it up, because there's a whole other category of stuff that I'm going to get into when you come out here to Texas in the studio, like driving, traveling in an automobile versus driving a motor vehicle, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Debt, mortgages, all that. But the one thing for people listening that were programmed and indoctrinated into a false sense of morality that paying your income taxes is a moral obligation, to use your obligation word again. Would you explain to the listeners where our income tax actually goes, and that it doesn't go to build schools and roads and things that we would hope it would? Or even people think it goes to Ukraine and Israel and foreign countries. It doesn't even go there. So break that down, because I find that really interesting.
It goes toward the national debt. There's actually even someone sent me the Granger report or something like that. There's even a report where they say that because the spending is so poor that, a lot of it doesn't even go to the interest on the debt. It just doesn't really, it just literally just, there's basically zero accountability. It just basically just vanishes into thin air. It does not go to Ukraine. It does not go to all these things. It does not go to anything. State of California is a private corporation located in the District of Columbia. The Internal Revenue Service is a private corporation located in Puerto Rico. So if you believe that paying Federal Reserve notes, which are promissory notes, they're not even real money. Real money is defined in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution as gold and silver coins. If you believe that Federal Reserve notes being transferred via a taxpayer to a private non-governmental organization in Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. territory, is now taking that money and then handing that money back to the private corporation called State of California, so that the CEO named Gavin Newsom can take said money and use it to do whatever he's going to do, I would need to see some evidence of that being the case, because that does not sound very realistic to me. And the reports that I've seen do not indicate that at all. And if you believe that to be true, you should do a Freedom of Information Act request on that information. And if your Freedom of Information Act request is denied, you should be filing lawsuits with these organizations in order to get into what's called discovery. When you are in a lawsuit and you get into discovery, you can ask all of these questions under penalty of perjury. And if the people you're asking do not answer the questions, you can actually order the court to find them in contempt of court, and they can be fined or imprisoned for not answering the questions. Now, if someone were to go into discovery and ask these questions and proof were to be submitted to the fact that via a taxpayer, which is a person who is subject to any internal revenue tax, this Federal Reserve notes, which are not money. If you look in UCC 3-114, very, very clear that these notes, these promissory notes and bills of exchange are not money. It says it literally verbatim. If you believe that sending these non-money negotiable instruments via a taxpayer public corporation to a foreign non-governmental trust that behaves as though it is a government agency, whereas when you go on the internet, you type in, is the IRS a government agency? And it's very, very clear. Even Google will tell you it is not a government agency. If you believe that those negotiable instruments or security is going to this private trust that's located in an incorporated zone outside of what you would consider America, called Puerto Rico, is then turning around and transferring said securities to the private corporation located in the District of Columbia called State of California, so that the private corporation called State of California, which is not even located where people think it's located and has nothing to do with territorial boundaries of California Republic, is then going to now take said securities and negotiable instruments and use them in order to improve the living environments of that local area. That, to me, sounds like a delusional nightmare.
It's like the biggest shell game in history.
Yeah.
It's like so much sleight of hand. It's insane. And I think this piece about taxes really plays on the inherent good in people, right? We all want to make contribution to society. We don't want to be selfish. We want to be giving. We want to, support the less fortunate and the poor and disabled people that can't take care of themselves. Any thinking, feeling person, of any moral character would want to contribute and help other people, like most of us do, right? But that's part of the manipulation that's so insidious, is that's not actually what's happening. And you can see that by going to any city, well, especially blue cities, and going downtown to Skid Row and watching, the state of the poor people there that are suffering and aren't being helped with our so-called tax dollars, right? So the whole thing is so fraudulent.
And you start going down the nonprofit zones and you start seeing all sorts of weird stuff with the nonprofits too. So I always recommend that if you really do, that's one thing I like about the old country boys. I grew up in Indiana. If the road's messed up, you buy a little something, you buy a little tar, you buy a little whatever it is at the store, and you head out there, and it's the men, obviously. It's a masculine thing. You pour a little whatever it is in there, and you scrape it, and you push it across, and you put up a couple little, orange cones, and that's it. The road's fixed now.
So I want to leave people with some links for you. We're going to put all this stuff at lukestorey.com/Brandon. So Brandon's site, you guys, is quite hilarious. And it's funny that the content is kind of so serious in its nature. Law, obviously, as you guys figured out by listening to this. But his site is onestupidfuck.com. His site is hilarious and also just really rich with valuable information. So if you guys found some of this intriguing, inspiring, you want to learn more, I highly recommend that you go there. And if you're serious about this, sign up for his free course, the Contract Killers course. I'm in it, like I said a couple times here tonight, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. To take something that is this dry and boring and make it entertaining is a real feat. So I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
It's not the type of, hour to hour and a half videos I would normally be able to watch and not fall asleep. But you bring so much levity and humor and just fun to it that it's actually really fun to learn this stuff, especially if you know what the possible rewards at the end of the rainbow are. If one was to implement this stuff and do so responsibly and not just go wild west about it, but really be mindful and learn as you go and take certain steps. I mean, it's potentially not potentially. I mean, it's extremely life-changing information. So I want to make sure that people go check that out. Also, you've got your law firm now, Williams and Williams, and I think the last podcast I listened to of yours, you said, well, I'm overwhelmed studying and putting out content, and I'm full of clients. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people listening that are like, yeah, I want to do this, but I want you to hold my hand, or as you say, hold my phallus on your content. I think that people need to realize, and you can answer, kind of what your capacity is for helping people or people that want to hire you. But I think the way you're putting out such, just a mass amount of high quality, high value information that people are kind of beholden to digest that information, because most of the questions and hand holding, I'm assuming, and this has been the case for me, I've texted you a couple times and asked you questions, and then I look like in the videos that I haven't watched yet, and I'm like, oh shit, he covers that in number 27. I just got to finish the damn video, so I'll stop bugging you. But I would recommend to people to really, if they're interested, to really finish that course before trying to like blow you up for questions you've already answered ad nauseum in your content. And I know how that is, because I produce 2-3 hour podcasts once a week. I've been doing that for 8 years. And people will hit me up on Instagram and be like, what's the best water filter? And I'm like, dude, that's why I put out these, exhaustive deep dive podcasts. So I usually just send people the podcast. I'm like, your answer is here, and, enjoy. And I'm happy to help people, but I'm sure that you find a lot of the questions you get from people that, want your direct help are already answered in all of the content you put out.
Yeah, I have a lot of shows, and I have stuff over here, and I have stuff over here, and I have stuff all over the place. And I'm about ready to make a update video, which is going to be placed right after video 11. And I will make an announcement to the whole email list. Is huge, just like 36,000 people. I will make an announcement, and it's going to be a bunch of updates to some of the things, like, for example, the fact that I have an explanatory statement available now, the fact that I have my own revocation of election, which is now free, that can be used instead of the Form 56, which is what I use in the course to revoke that election that you made to be treated as a U.S. resident for the purposes of determining your income tax liability from 26 CFR 1.871-1. Form 56 is what I talk about how to use in the course, but the revocation of election affidavit document that I now give away for free, which is pretty new, in my opinion, is a better choice. So I'm going to be making a video just updating some things. I'm going to place it after video 11. I've got a bunch of notes here in my little pack. I'm just kind of making sure I have everything I want to say kind of nailed down. But I try to do whatever I can, explain whatever I can, and make updates and make things and as we go. And then what I'm working on now is the pro se litigant course, which is going to be released probably later this year. I don't know how late. It depends. We got to get a couple of big W's on these, couple of big wins on these cases. And then I'm going to be teaching everyone how to, all by yourself, no lawyer, nothing. You don't even need any money up front. Literally how to do it even for free. I'm going to teach you that too. Full-blown litigation A to Z, no money down, no lawyer required. Awesome. Anything you want, go after anybody you want. That's going to be the pro se litigant course. And that course is also going to be free.
Amazing. Yeah. And what's going on with your Williams and Williams, your upper and lowercase two dual identities, your law firm? I mean, are you guys working with people in this capacity? Or I'm sure people are going to want to know that. Like, cool, I'll study all this stuff, but I want help. I mean, do you even do that, or are you at capacity at this point?
So I can show you real quick. So this is williamsandwilliamslawfirm.com. We have the current and previous litigation page. If you go down, I have the various cases that I'm working on, and then I have a link to the PDF files. associated with the various complaints and civil cover letters and summons, so you can actually see everything we're doing. And then people don't realize if you go to Pacer, which is for federal cases, if you go to pacer.uscourts.gov, you can actually open up a free account, and you can actually search for cases, all cases. People don't realize this, all cases and everything going on in these cases and all the things that are being filed in these cases is all completely public information, and you can download it and print it, and you can do whatever you want. These are not private. Every once in a while, maybe there'll be I don't involve myself in child cases, but if you have a child involved and there's certain laws against the information of the child being published, specific filings into a court case may be considered private and may not be available on the Pacer app, but 90%, especially of the stuff that we're doing, almost everything is all public and available to be downloaded. So just to make it easy, I have the PDF of the summons and the complaint and all the good stuff available right here for download for free. And then if you want to follow the cases, tremendous amounts of action is occurring in my first case. The second, third case are new. And then my American Express case, which is going to be massive, and people are really excited about seeing it. I just sent it off in the mail yesterday. I should have a case number within 4 or 5 days, and then that will get trumpeted through my email list and everywhere else, and everyone's very excited to see that. So if you would like to see all the original documents of what we're doing, you can download those for free from williamsandwilliamslawfirm.com. If you would like to follow along and see all of the tremendously hilarious activities of lawyers trying to intimidate my clients and complain that I am a sovereign citizen and flail around like children, you can see that in the Pacer app, and you can look up the various case numbers and you can follow along. Very exciting. I consider this, and I hear a lot of my people say that it's more exciting than television, which I agree 100%. I think it's more exciting than television. And to answer your question, I'm not really taking on a whole lot of people right now. We have a few clients, a bunch of cases for each client. I got a few clients that I'm onboarding. And then I have a lot of my own stuff. I'm trying to make time for all of my own stuff. I have so many things I want to file. And if you look here at how litigation works, there's a breakdown of exactly how all of it works and exactly how we take on our clients and exactly what kind of clients we do accept. And then if you would like more information as to how is this legal and how can this even exist and are you even a lawyer and like, oh my God, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen, you can go to the questions and answers section where I answer all of those questions in great detail. And I have all of the definitions, and I have ideas and the two types of attorney and what those mean and how they're established, and are you a member of the bar, and are you practicing in the state of California, and a lot of the information on this podcast is here, but it's very, very good. And then one last thing I would like to actually share is on my my YouTube channel. Let me stop sharing for just a moment. I have a few. It's also the 3 pinned videos on my Instagram profile, which is one.stupid.fuck. If you go to my YouTube channel, let me just see here. There are 3 videos that are only 10 minutes long. Let me show you those. Those are my favorite because if anybody,
infinite money, baby.
Yeah. So here's the problem. You're going to want to go and you're going to learn all this information, and you're going to run around and try to tell everybody, and they're all going to tell you you're the most insane POS they've ever seen in their life. Okay. Now the way to handle that is I have this video here, how to have infinite money in less than 10 minutes. I have this video here, how to legally operate any car, motorcycle, etc., without smog or a license or whatever. 10-minute video. And then I have how to legally never pay taxes again in 10 minutes. Okay. Now, if you go on my Instagram, those 3 videos are the 3 pinned videos. If you go on my TikTok, those 3 videos are the pinned videos. Facebook, I only have just the infinite money video pinned because you can only pin 1 video. These are by far the best things to show people that you would like to share this information with, but you just don't think you know enough, and you don't think you could capture their attention for several hours, which is what a lot of my other material is. The 10-minute videos are funny. They're super fun. They're super lighthearted, and they're just so insane that they were like flags in the ground. It's like, if I can explain this stuff to someone that's never heard of any of this in less than 10 minutes, I've really, really nailed it. I mean, I could just take a jury. I don't care who the jury is, where they come from, age range, race. I could care less. I'm winning the case. For me, it was that 10-minute mark. So I personally think that those videos are huge for the movement. I think they're huge for what we're doing. And I think they're huge for people trying to share this information without being killed by their friends and family.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of blank stares when you start to share this information with people. It's just like right over the top of the head. But those are great videos. I highly recommend that. We'll put them all in the show notes at lukestorey.com/Brandon. Well, man, this has been enlightening, inspiring, super fun. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and I can't wait to get you out here to Texas, man. I know you're going to go on Alex's show, the Way Forward. You're going to come over here, and we have a great group here, man, in Austin of like-minded folks, some buddies of mine, and everyone's starting to learn about this and become really interested and take some action. So it's really exciting. I mean, this is the first thing in, I don't know, maybe ever that I've actually seen as a viable way to really improve your life substantially, and to do so in a legal way that is devoid also of any. This isn't like a F the government movement. This is like, we're going to peacefully coexist with you. You guys do your thing in the District of Columbia and in the United States, and a group of us are just going to kind of go do our own thing and go old school United States of America. It's like. There's a sense of diplomacy and peacefulness that actually feels really good to my nervous system. As someone who's kind of been F the man my whole life, it's like, wow, what if I just kind of, go my own way and forge my own path and allow them to keep doing whatever it is they want to do and just, not participate in it. It's a much more, I think, mentally healthy approach to it. And I really appreciate that that's where you're coming from with this. And it's not, it's really not subversive, or it's not even rebellious. It's just kind of like, we talked about earlier, taking responsibility for your life and making different choices that are available.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a matter of educating people that there are other choices that are available for those that choose to pursue them. So, man, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the work you're doing. It's super fun. I haven't been this jazzed about something in quite a long time, so I'm excited.
I love it. Yeah, it's good stuff, man. I'm the same way. I'm a freak, so it is what it is.
Great. You sure are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll see you in a few weeks, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luke.